It was
Recording
Tafshin
in
Lamed
progress.
Tes, 50 years from Tafresh Peites. And it was the same Kviyas like this year. If you'll see at the top, it says Sichas Early Yom Hey. It was the night going into Thursday, Wednesday night. For those of us on the East Coast, it's already Wednesday night. Parshas Vayishlach, Yudal Kislev Tafshin Lamed Tes. It says in the subtitle, subheader, Yovel Chamishim, HaChamishim Nasui Kvayus Admar Shlita. It's the 50th anniversary, marriage anniversary of the Rebbe. So often in the later years, when the Rebbe would Farbrengen on unusual or uncommon dates, because there were sometimes that were, regular dates, well-known dates, Yutas Kislev or Yud Kislev or some other either regular Yom Tov of the year or a Yom of the Pagra on the Chassidic calendar, and that was it. That was what the Rebbe Farbrengen. In the later years, the Rebbe looked for many more opportunities to Farbrengen. So he often started off in the way that he talks about, that he's going to talk about at the beginning of this Farbrengen, that the very fact that Yidden get together, that in and of itself, especially that they're getting together for purposes of adding in Torah mitzvahs, that itself is a good purpose in and of itself. So you don't need any excuses for it. So he says, concerning the coming together, literally Farbrengen, but Isvadus means joining together. Coming together. We have to preface what was spoken about many times. About what's explained in many places. The great advantage and quality in the very fact that Jews are gathering together. That itself is of great value. And the Rebbe is going to focus on one particular thing. Like I said, the Rebbe spoke about this on many occasions, and every time the Rebbe gives a new twist to it, a new nuance about the idea of Yidden gathering together. And he begins about this. Mashukosov Rabbeinu Azokin. And it's also, the Rebbe says in the footnotes that this was also something that was said in the Mamorim of the Chasana about the importance of Yidden get together. In the Mamorim of his wedding, there was a series of Mamorim that the Frierdiker Rebbe said in connection with the Rebbe's wedding. So he does mention the idea about the importance of Yidden getting together. Umaschil, and this is beginning from, but again, the Rebbe points out, this is not explicitly stated over there, from what the Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya, in Geras HaKodesh, Simon Chav Gimel, and the Alter Rebbe himself is not just saying it on his own, Umitzaref Bazeh es HaBaal Shem Tov HaMagid, because and he adds to it the Baal Shem Tov and the Mezritcher Magid by writing, I have heard from my masters. And the Rebbe is going to explain when the Alter Rebbe says, I have heard from my masters, that means the Baal Shem Tov and the Mezritcher Magid, as he's going to explain in a moment. We're going to skip over the brackets. It's a long bracket to the following page. It continues at the, let's see which paragraph it continues. It continues in all the way through to 3 paragraphs from the bottom of the next page. So he says, "V'yadu klal." It's known the rule. Kemuva b'kam makomis, like it's brought down in many places. In the footnotes, he points to different sichos of the Frierdiker Rebbe. Shekeshenemar shamati mim moiri. When it says, when I heard from my master, Lashon Yachid, he says in the singular, Hakavani Lam Magid. It's referring to things that the Alter Rebbe heard from the Mezritcher Magid. My teachers or my masters in Lashon Rabim, in the plural, Hakavani Lam Magid al Baal Shem Tov, the intention, what is the Alter Rebbe referring to, or whom is the Alter Rebbe referring to? He's referring to both the Mezritcher Magid and the Baal Shem Tov. So what did he hear from them? So he's going to quote the Alter Rebbe from the Geras HaKodesh. Ki'ilu nimtza malach echad, oimed b'mayim asora, mi Yisrael biyachad, if one malach would be found in the presence of 10 Yidden that are standing together, or are together with each other. Standing is not exact word. Shalzeh Amr Azal, concerning this Chazal say, Akol be'asor Shechinta Sharia, wherever 10 Yidden get together, the Shechina rests upon them. Even if those 10 Yidden are not speaking words of Torah. Tipol olav a masav afachad, on that malach. You would think a malach is greater than a Yid. The malach would be in a trembling, shaking fear. He was a little bit shaking in his boots, as the expression goes. Beli gvul v'tachlis, in an uncontrollable, unending fear, mishchinta the sharya alayu, because the shchinta that is resting upon those 10 Jews. Until he would be totally nullified completely. He would cease to exist because of his great awe and fear. The Rebbe then continues, that is just when 10 Yidden are there together, not doing anything positive. If they're doing something positive, so then that positive energy is even more so, would be overwhelming for the Malach. Last paragraph on this page, how much more so? When we're talking about a state and a gathering of 10 Yidden, how much more so if there's 100 or 1,000 that are not only they're spending time together, but they're spending times involved in Torah mitzvahs. What Torah mitzvahs are we spending time now, the Rebbe says? Like this gathering, its goal and its purpose, that we should be increasing in Torah mitzvahs. It's both about increasing in Torah mitzvahs at the particular event where they're all together. It's also, its purpose is to increase in Torah mitzvahs following and after the conclusion of this event, after the conclusion of the gathering. So therefore, the Rebbe is saying just the very fact that Yidden are together by this Farbrengen, that itself is a justification in and of itself. You don't need any reason to say why, what, when, what are we doing over here. This itself it doesn't have to be for a particular end and purpose. It's an end in itself. In addition to the great advantage in the gathering of many Yidden, that's explained in the above mentioned Igeres HaKodesh of the Alter Rebbe, the quality of it and advantage. This is also explained in the pamphlet called Hecholzu of the Rebbe Rashab, and also in the Bamorim of the Rebbe's wedding, which is like a whole pamphlet of different selection of different Mamorim that the Frierdiker Rebbe said over the occasion of the Rebbe's wedding and Sheva Brachos and so on, and the Shabbos before the wedding. The Oz Nidbru Yireh Hashem Ish Oreyu. Then those that are fearing Hashem, they were speaking a man to this fellow. Vayakshav Hashem Vayishma, Hashem listens and he heard. It's written down as a book of remembrance for those that are fearing Hashem and those that are considering and taking into account His name. Like the Frierdiker Rebbe explains in the Maimer, connected with the wedding, during the time of speech and inspiration. That one should become inspired and one should inspire their fellow. So then Hashem listens and hears. Yemolt, then the Frierdiker Rebbe says, is jeder der Herr dem Eibishten. So every person then hears, is aware of, senses Hashem. Und in jederen wird der Eibishter der Herd, jederen der Herd dem Eibishter, that Hashem is sensitive to and hears every single person. Und in jederen wird der Eibishter gehört. And in each one, Hashem is perceived and heard and felt. In other words, the Friedrich Rebbe gives a twist on the words Vayakshiv Hashem Vayishma. It doesn't just mean that Hashem is listening, but Hashem is being heard within us. It's going both on Hashem and us, that Hashem is being heard and permeating us. Until it becomes afterwards a remembrance on the days following it, like he says, Vayikosiv Sefer Zikaron, it will be written a book of remembrance, so that something that's remembered means that even when the time passes, it stays with you afterwards. Like all the specific details of the explanation, like the Friedrich Rebbe brings in the Chasna Maimer following this pasuk. So therefore, the Rebbe says, in truth, we need no excuse for Farbrengen. We need no excuse for a get-together. The very fact that you didn't get together and is an unbelievable quality, and especially when you didn't get together for the sake of Torah mitzvahs, that in and of itself is unbelievable. So therefore, there really needs no explanation why Yidden should get together out of Farbrengen. The Rebbe continues in Ois Beis, after all of the above mentioned explanations, there's still a need for a reason for this Farbrengen. What's today from all other days? Specifically now, this is actualized. In other words, true. Every time you can get together, especially when you get together for Torah mitzvahs, it's wonderful, it's great, it's amazing. But lepoil, it's not something that for whatever reason, it's not done every day. So this day specifically was chosen for the day when there's going to be a Farbrengen, when we're going to get together. So there must be something specific and special about this day that causes us to get together. And the response for this, what's so special about today's date and this time, like all matters by Jewish people, this has to be in such a way of you looking in the Torah, to find a source for this in the Torah. So first of all, the Rebbe suggests another source, which he's not going to go with in the final analysis, and this is something that we've learned about on other occasions in our Wednesday Shiur. Seemingly, there's a source for this at the conclusion of the section of Shulchan Aruch of Orach Chaim. Orach Chaim is literally the way of life, which deals with the halachas that have to do with a Jew throughout their whole daily, weekly, and annual halachas. Other sections of Shulchan Aruch, Choshen Mishpat deals with monetary laws, Even Ezer deals with different laws pertaining to marriage, Yeridea deals with different halachas having to do with prohibitions, but the daily cycle, the weekly cycle, the annual cycle, they are covered in Orach Chaim. So at the conclusion of the Orach Chaim section, it says, he brings a pasuk, he concludes with the words that it says, in Mishlei, V'toiv leiv, someone that's good of heart, Mishta Tamid, he's always celebrating. And Ve'ein Mikra Yotzim De Pshutai, and the pasuk does not leave its simple sense. So therefore, since a person is always supposed to be joyous, okay, so that's why we're getting together at this, and it doesn't need an excuse, it doesn't need an explanation. Toiv leiv Mishta Tamid, it says, Tamid, always. Now, the Rebbe right away says, I know that others do not take this literally. There are achroinim, the final codifiers, after the codifiers, that derive from this many hints and explanations in it. Pashtus, in a simple sense, this comes in continuation to the halacha that the Moshe Isserlich, who wrote the glosses on the Shulchan Aruch that was written by the Beis Yosef, that we paskin, Ashkenazim paskin according to the Ramah, he writes beforehand, why does he bring this in? What's the topic under consideration? So if you remember, we said the Shulchan Aruch works on the daily life, on the weekly life of a Yid, and the annual life of the Yid. So when it starts after Hilchos Shabbos, it starts going through the entire year in Yom Tovim. It goes through Pesach and Shavuos and all the Yom Tovim of Tishrei. It talks about Purim. And then it speaks about, at the very, very, very end of Orach Chaim, at the conclusion of the entire annual cycle, it speaks about those years where there's what's called Purim Katan. There's the minor Purim, which is if you have a Shana Muberes, you have a leap year. So then, in addition to having the halachic Purim with all the different halachas of Megillah and Shalach Manas and Suda and so on, that takes place on the 14th of the second Adar, there is also a minor Purim. Now the question is, what do you do on the minor Purim? Yeah, we don't say Tachnun. What about other celebrations? So the Ramah suggests as follows. Second line, second paragraph in Gimel. Now he's quoting the Ramah. Yesh oimrim, there are those that say, Shechayev laharbis b'mishta v'simcha b'yudalet shabbat v'chul, that a person is obligated to increase in a meal and in rejoicing on the 14th of the first Adar, even though that's only the minor Purim, it's not the real Purim, comes only in the second Adar. Valzem Mesayim, and concerning this, the Ramah concludes, in other words, should we follow this opinion? Should we not follow this opinion? So he says, V'toiv leiv mishtatamid, that someone that's good of heart is always celebrating. So why is the Ramah bringing this? To bring emphasis that you cannot go wrong if you celebrate. If there's two opinions, one opinion says you don't have to celebrate, another opinion says you have to celebrate. Since you anyway have to celebrate all the time, so you can't go wrong. Celebrate it anyway. So therefore, what we see from the Ramah is that the meaning of this pasuk v'toiv leiv mishta tamid is in a simple sense, that it's always good to celebrate, and that's why he uses it as a proof to follow the view that we're supposed to celebrate even on the minor Purim. Moving from this understood, shakavona b'mishta Gam Simcha, what's the intention? Gam Suda, what is the meaning of the word Mishta? It's a literal party. Mishta kapshute kasher yayin, Mishta yayin. We know the simple meaning of Mishta is in the word shia, drinking. That has to do with wine, like it says, b'mishta yayin, asharasas, in the party of wine. So therefore, what do we see from here? That there's an inyan even to celebrate every single day of the year. So therefore, again, why do we need to make a point of explaining what this Farbrengen is about? Every day of the year is a day for celebration with wine and a meal, etc., etc. But the Rebbe says, but still, 2 paragraphs from the bottom of the page, Aval Afal Pikain, still in all, still in all from this itself, that despite the directive of the Ramah that we said before, the custom is not to make a celebratory party every single day with wine. So when we do make a party, like a Farbrengen, we say L'chaim, etc., like whatever was doing at that moment, it needs explanation. So the Rebbe says, in our case, what the Rebbe was at that time marking, the 50th anniversary of his marriage, should be that during the day of a wedding, many people gather together, friends, in other words, a person, not day of the wedding, but the anniversary, friends and close friends gather together in many places in a way of spending time together and celebration and saying l'chaim. It needs to have a foundation and at least a hint in the Torah for this. So the Rebbe is going to bring a very interesting point without explicitly saying that there is such a case in the Torah for it, like other things where the Rebbe pointed out and asked for us to do, like a Yom Haledes, like celebrating a birthday, which was not common until the Rebbe made this an important point. But the Rebbe brought examples in the Torah and from Chachamim and from Chazal, etc., of the importance of a birthday. Here, the Rebbe is going to use a broader brush to reach to that. But before he goes there, he says, what about the Rabbeim? Did the Rabbeim celebrate an anniversary? So the Rebbe says on the top of the next page, to note, it is difficult to find this by our Rabbeim, our leaders, the celebration of an anniversary, at least the specialness of this anniversary, the 50th anniversary, because not by every one of them did they have lived to such a long time that they would be able to celebrate a 50th anniversary after the wedding. And even by those that there was such a possibility, like the Rebbe brings later in the Farbrengen, that his father-in-law, the Frierdiker Rebbe, did live long enough to have celebrated the 50th anniversary. Tafshin Zayin, 1947, was the 50th anniversary of the Frierdiker Rebbe of his chasana in 1897 of Tafresh Nun Zayin. Still in all, lo yoidim ketzad hoisa anagosam ba'ifim prati. We do not know how those that did have the actual opportunity of a 50th wedding anniversary, we don't know how they acted as individuals. Now, the Rebbe points out how they acted as individuals not always impacted and was appropriate until whenever it was appropriate for it to be revealed. Let's see the parentheses. We find that the leader of our generation, the Frierdiker Rebbe, revealed many different types of customs and other things that was done from generation to generation in the family of the Rabbeim. But until the Frierdiker Rebbe revealed them, no one else knew about them. For whatever reason it was. An example of this was Chayel, for example. Chayel was not a known Yom Tov, the birthday of the Baal Shem Tov and of the Alter Rebbe, and was never made a point until the Frierdiker Rebbe made a point of revealing it. The Rag Bezman, and only in his time when he revealed it did it become known. And like the Frierdiker Rebbe himself said, when the appropriate time came for it, he made it well known. So therefore, we don't know what the Rabbeim did privately, those that were able to celebrate a 50th wedding anniversary, because the time was not yet right, for whatever reason, to reveal it. So, the Rebbe is going to, like I said before, going to paint in a broad brush. Not that he's going to find, like in other situations, he finds that particular activity in the Torah, like celebrating a birthday. He's not going to point to a particular celebration of the Torah that's connected with an anniversary or a 50th anniversary, but he's going to connect it with the idea of following the customs of the land in general. Second paragraph on the page. The hint for this in the Torah is B'divrei HaMedrash, in the words of the Medrash. These words in the Medrash is brought down Chassidus many times. Azlis lekarta, when you come to the city, halach b'nimusa, follow its customs. Now the Rebbe is now going to say like this, there is two ways how one can follow in the customs of the city. One is in a way that is elevating the person, and in a way that a person is doing better things and greater things because of that city. And sometimes it could be descending, again, not in a bad way, but still in a relatively descent, going to involve themselves in what might be considered lower things. Let's see how the Rebbe words it. The Inyan Zohar Beis found him in this of following the customs of the city is in two manners. When you're going in a way of from below to above, you're going to a higher place. When a person arrives to a place, to a higher place, when it comes to something that's higher than him, there's seemingly a directive and a lesson and from the Rabbeim not to grab every hidur and minig. Like it's explained at length in the sichos of the Friedrich Rebbe that speak about this different reasons why. That there was once a certain chassid that tried to copy a certain hidur, the Rebbe Rashab, and the Rebbe Rashab was displeased. He felt he was like reaching beyond his what he was holding by. So even though ordinarily we're not supposed to just copy things, but Afal became still in all, Mevur b'medrash hatam lekach. It's explained in Medrash a very interesting thing. When Moshe Rabbeinu went up to Har Sinai Azai, lechem lo yachal u'mayim l'shas. It says that he did not eat bread and he did not drink water. So the Medrash says a very interesting thing. It wasn't for lack of food. It wasn't for lack of opportunity. The Medrash says, why? You come to a place, you act in the customs of the place. In Shamayim, nobody eats. Don't be the only one sitting over in the corner that, brown paper bag, Moshe Rabbeinu is going to pull out his lunch when nobody else eats. So we find the idea that when you go to a higher place, you take on and act in accordance with the higher place. And also, it works the other way. You go to a lower place, you'll find the exact same thing. In a similar vein, going from above to below, then a person can say that's a descent, and a descent doesn't always apply. There is a halacha under certain specific circumstances that if a person is coming from a place where they have a particular custom, let's say not to do malacha on Erev Pesach, for example, and he traveled to a place where they do work on Erev Pesach, under certain circumstances, he has to follow the customs where he came from. In other words, even when he comes to a different place. So we find that just because you went to a lower place doesn't mean that you are all of a sudden released from your higher obligations. Still in all, certain customs you could adopt. It's brought down the medrash to prove from what it says by the malachim that were by Avram, Vayochel. It says that just the flip side of what Moshe Rabbeinu was. Moshe Rabbeinu went to Shemayim, he ate. Why? Because of, he didn't eat. Excuse me. He didn't eat because you come to a place, you act in the customs of the place. The same thing the other way. Why did the Malachim eat? They didn't need to eat. They weren't hungry. Why did they eat? And Rashi brings us down also, because when you come to a place, you act according to the custom. So you see that even when going down, seemingly, you do adopt the customs of that place. In a similar vein, when one is going from above to below. I'm sorry, we said that already. Next paragraph, concerning our topic under discussion about celebrating a wedding anniversary and a 50th wedding anniversary. It is the custom of Jews in this country, in the United States, and in also many other countries, when the wedding anniversary comes along, any wedding anniversary, especially a wedding anniversary is connected with a certain number, 10th anniversary, a 50th anniversary, a 25th anniversary. So then family gather and friends and so on. They rejoice and encourage every man his fellow and every woman her fellow, her friend in all matters. And to note, this is what we see in the customs of the country. This is what we see in America that people do. When it comes to a Yid, he remembers, or he needs to remember Tamid constantly as a psak dim b'Shulchan Aruch, the ruling in Shulchan Aruch shekol masecha yiyu l'shem shamayim, that all your actions should be for the sake of heaven, u'b'chol drachecha de'eyu, and all your ways you should know him. V'alachas kama v'kama, how much more so, in something that the Shechina is being partnered over here, because the Shechina rests whenever Yidden get together. The Shechina and the Shechina in the most wondrous way, like the Alter Rebbe explains in the Geras HaKodesh, the Malachim would burn up from the revelation. How much more so Valachas Kam V'Kam Mukshadover Nasu Basic Nesel based on Medrash, when the matter occurs in a shul, in a place of learning, by his gadol, it's a great house. But a great house could also mean a house that grows things. Megadlim by Tefillah, a house that grows davening. Megadlim by Torah, a house that grows Torah. How much more so if it's connected with the leader of our generation, the Frierdiker Rebbe, for the duration of 10 years being in this world. These were his 4 cubits. Like the Rebbe spoke about in Farbrengen on Shabbos Parshas Vayetze of that year. I just divrei admor amtsoy about the words of the Mittler Rebbe, shedavke bedalt am shalodem shoyrich hayichidish benefesh, specifically in the 4 cubits of a person. That's where the Yechidah resides. They're not even found in the heart and brain of the person, like the Mittler Rebbe explains at length. So if we have all these wonderful things coming together, we're in the area of the Frierdiker Rebbe, and we're in a place where, because so many Yidden get together, it's the Shechina there and so on. Surely we have to connect it with a matter of doing it for the sake of heaven, and even more so until you actually know him and are cognizant of Hashem in this event. Like the Alter Rebbe explains in the 3rd chapter of Tanya, the idea of das is from the word bonding and binding. He binds his mind with a strong bond until from this becomes a birth of love and its branches and awe in its branches. Like he continues afterwards, that love is the root and source for all the 248 positive commandments. And the awe is a root and a source for all the 365 negative commandments. All the 613 mitzvahs includes the entire life of a person, to all of its details and details of their details. So therefore, das is a powerful tool, and that's what he's saying of your da'ehu. We have to have our connection with Hashem in everything we do in the way of das, because then that's going to impact our love and our awe, which impacts every part of our life in Torah and mitzvahs. So then, celebrating a wedding anniversary becomes not just a minig, but it becomes a minig Yisrael Torah, a minig of Yisrael, which is Torah, ba'ofen shemevi gam Torah kipshuta, in such a way that brings to the literal idea of Torah, Hisafa b'limud Torah, an increase in Torah study, or b'limud mevodei maisa, and a study that brings to action, behidur b'kiyum mitzvahs, in taking extra care in the fulfillment of mitzvahs. V'yiratzin should be the will of Hashem. Shenisker, we should merit shekachi yagam benegel lisvada zu. That this should also be concerning this gathering. Like my father-in-law, the Frierdiker Rebbe, related about the well-known expression, sheyifal be, that the Farbrengen should affect me. In other words, the Rebbe leading the Farbrengen is asking and requesting that the Farbrengen should affect him, and it should affect the listeners. Shekol echad yachshav la'atzmi. So the Rebbe says this doesn't just mean the one sitting at the head of the table and speaking, but every single person should think to themselves, yivakish, and he should search out, v'yasa, and he should do, kol hatoli boy, everything that's dependent upon him, sheyifal boyu ba'ashoimim, that it should influence him and the listeners. Should be fulfilled what it says. It should be heard and be written a book of memories before him. It should affect both above and below. So not just the person is affected, but Hashem is affected. And above and below together, and action is what's primary. This will also add in the appropriate preparation for the Yom Tov, or the redemption of Yutas Kislev, Rosh Hashanah l'Torahs Chassidus l'Darkei Chassidus, the Rosh Hashanah for the teachings of Chassidus and to the ways of Chassidus. And all matters are connected with Torahs Chassidus and Darkei Chassidus, out of joy and gladness of heart.